Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us today. We are here as South Texas Business Aviation Association and North Texas Business Aviation Association, along with the National Business Aviation Association's YoPro committee, and we are coming to present the second series of our webinar. What we wanted to talk about are important topics. So we started out, what is mentorship? As the mentorship committee, we want to mentor our peers, mentor each other, and learn so that we can improve. And one of the things that is required in order to do that is our mental performance. And we often know this in the context of mental health. So the four of us have gathered here today to have a conversation. We want everyone who's joining us live, feel free to type in your comments on whatever social platform you're watching from so that we can engage and answer your questions, so that we can pull the curtain back and start to look at a very important topic and reframe mental health into mental performance so that it becomes something that we all treat just as much as we do with our work performance and our physical health and vitality. Emily is the co-chair of the mentorship committee with me and the South Texas Business Aviation Association. She's also 40 under 40 and has done a lot with the YoPro Council and our industry for many years. We have Carlos, who has also joined the BAMC committee and working really heavy on the leadership component for our industry. And Aasiya, who has been doing so many things for the dispatcher crew. I still have my dispatcher mug that I got the other year that says all dispatchers are superheroes, because you are. And she's also 40 under 40 and a YoPro. So we're happy to unite Texas and come here and talking about this topic that up until recently was very, very taboo. So I just want to start the conversation by asking each of you, what does mental health mean to you? And then we'll go into the conversation from there. So Emily, I'll hand over to you.
All right. So mental health to me means clarity within my own head, the ability to focus, see clearly, and not be stressed or not have negative reactions to stress. We're always going to have stress, but being able to handle stress in a positive outcome. So personal happiness and ability to keep going every day, one foot in front of the other.
That's a great, very clear definition, very simple. And I love that it's not that we won't have stress, it's that we're able to positively handle stress. There's a big difference between the two. Carlos, how about you?
Sarah, first of all, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you ladies here. It's an important topic. To me, stress comes in many different forms, right? You have what I consider your external and your internal pressures. Being in part of this aviation industry for over 24 years, I experienced it all. From the MRO side to being a private operator, you see it all, the stress. And the tools that you create over time are essential for the survival of your mental state, right? And over the years, I've kind of come up with those tools to better cope with those situations when they arise. So for me, it's kind of keeping an even playing field in my life, professional life, private life, and just being able to survive during tough moments. And I feel that our industry, since the beginning of the pandemic, we just been off to the races. I mean, you see it all over the place, from the lack of personnel, more flights. So that there's that external stress that we're seeing more and more demand from pilots, technicians, flight attendants, dispatchers. We're seeing it all. And then also the internal performance. We want to perform, but also fatigue. You gotta consider that. That's a big part of what made those stressful moments more impactful for our personal beings.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you brought up fatigue, because that is often an overlooked area outside of what's regulated. But even beyond that, really we're starting to understand more about sleep and how it affects our performance, how the cumulative lack of sleep or lack of being able to process in our brain is affecting us, right? Sometimes we get the physical rest, but we haven't fully processed everything up here, and so that's just as impactful. Thank you, Carlos. Aasiya, over to you.
Yeah. By definition, it's probably simple. To be so strong that nothing can disturb your peace of mind, no matter what the circumstances is. And really to talk health, happiness, and prosperity to everyone we meet in any kind of circumstances we come across every day.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It is, again, I'm hearing a theme here with everybody that really it's about being able to handle what comes your way, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, things happen. I mentioned before we went live, I've started to re-listen to the book that actually got me to meditate. It's designed for high achievers who can't sit still and think that they've failed at meditation in the past, because every time they try, they get frustrated and they're like more angry at the end. So this was the perfect book for me to read like 6 years ago. And she was talking about, the difference between like what we know as stress, which we just have this kind of blanket term for everything, versus, these situations that we have to handle. And that's just life. We have situations all day, every day, whether that's an owner changing their schedule, an AOG, someone, getting sick and not being able to come into the office or show up for, their shift. We always will have things to handle. And yet there are the bigger stressor moments. And it's about being able to, and in those moments, know you have the toolkit and you have the adaptability. So she gives some really excellent reframes. And so I highly recommend, I'll share the link in the comments as well, but it's Stress Less, Accomplish More by Emily Fletcher. Great book, especially if you are a high achiever, which most people in business aviation are.
Yeah.
And this topic we had yesterday, there was I know I saw some of you on there, the BAMC committee had their summer learning series. Heidi Hanna, who was another keynote at leadership this year, her book, The Sharp Solution, she was also sharing strategies. So if you haven't gotten a recording of that, definitely go and seek that out. This book here, Aasiya and I were talking about it before we went live. It's the first book on the brain where like my brain was relaxed and I didn't feel like I was just reading big words and going, okay, yeah, this means something, but hard to connect to. So she did a really excellent job on making it simple. Aasiya, what were your favorite takeaways from this book, The Sharp Solution?
I think one of mine was so for something personal for me, I've been really working hard on being physical. I'm getting older, getting in the gym. And I loved where she talked about that, when we're talking about weight loss or any kind of goal, it's so easy to say, I'm just this is me personally, worked so many hours, getting up at 4:30, exhausted, coming home to kids. And you see that pizza sitting there, for example, and you're like, you just want to eat it because you're like, you know what, I had a really long, hard day and I deserve this. But in any kind of instance we come across, we have to think like, okay, what is our end goal here? What are we really trying to accomplish? And so I did the activity where she had us write out all of our personal goals and what do we want to achieve, and kind of always keeping it simple and always remembering that. So when we come across those instances in life, like having the pizza in front of us, where it just seems so tempting and so easy, the path of least resistance, that because we've outlined our goals, we know that, hey, we need to make an educated, a decision here and not go that way. Just like I was mentioning, I really want to take the 6 months to CAM, and it seems overwhelming, but that's my goal. Like I want to do that. So I should, it's on my list of things. So having those goals outlined and physically writing them out has helped me in staying kind of more on the course of what do I need to get from A to B and then B to C and so forth. And then the second one, that's why I was asking you how often you meditate, is she's telling us to incorporate like just 3 minutes of breaks, or stepping outside and taking a walk around my office building to do that physical activity and incorporating that stuff. So I'm trying to, and I feel like those little breaks she's recommended in her book really do help. Because I'm kind of the type of person, going back to Sarah, when you presented at leadership, I'm constantly on my computer, and I do think I forget to take those long breaths, So when you do force yourself to take a 2-3 minute break, I see myself doing this, how you taught us,
Yeah.
merging what you taught us at leadership and what Dr. Heidi taught us. So I think those takeaways, those little bits and pieces have been really helpful for me.
Amazing. Yeah, it's incredible what just the small pattern interrupt can give you.
Yeah.
And so one of the hacks that I actually introduced this year was I made all of my 30-minute meetings 25 minutes and all of my hour-long meetings 55 minutes. That gives me 5 minutes to have a bio break, go step outside, look out the window, just have some water, right? To be able to take those conscious breaths. And it might seem small, but it has made a huge difference. And that also gives me a little bit, because, once you realize the time, it's already running into the next meeting. So it's now given me this buffer through my day where I'm not finding that run over. And that's also giving me more space. I'm all about the white space in the calendar these days instead of all jamming it full as much as I can. So that's really great. So, I wanted to ask each of you, you've been in the industry a long time, right? There's obviously been a huge stigma around this word, particularly for pilots or anyone that has a license, worried that they'll be seen as unstable, not able to handle it. Our culture didn't really support this language, this understanding. And a lot of this research is recent, right? Around the divergences of the brain and how we really do need to sleep or meditate, take naps. I remember when I first went to China, when I was about my first year of being stationed over there, everyone would take a nap after lunch. And I was like, what is happening right now? And in my brain, I was like judging everybody, thinking that they were lazy or like, how could they do this in the office? And now I'm like, man, they're onto something. Like they actually were doing the right thing. I've taken 3 naps in the last week, and that is like a record for me. And I'm like, you know what? Let's do more of this. I think a nap a day keeps the doctor away. So I'm incorporating that more. But I would love to know, from your career journey, what the arc has been, the reality, and this pivot that we're experiencing now, how you're seeing that show up in the workplace and in the industry, and how that might be affecting your own perception of what's okay and what's not okay. So Carlos, let's start with you.
Sarah, thank you. And, I can tell you that being around for the industry for 24 years, as I said earlier, and also having a pilot background, I do have my private pilot's license, and I surround myself with a lot of friends who are pilots who've been around the industry for a long, long time. Taking those long journeys on aircraft, long-range aircraft. I see how over time their mental state starts degrading bit by bit, just because of those long journeys, right? And it's stressful sometimes, depending on what part of the war they're flying into. It does create that stress. And then the problem with us men is that we're raised in a certain manner that you're told when you're a little boy, you fall, you get hurt, your dad is telling you, get up, be a man. And things over time, it's become a mental state where when something's wrong with you, you don't say anything. We men, we're horrible at this. We don't say anything. And so that's stigma. I'm glad you're bringing this up, because there's a lot of pilots out there that are really scared about what's coming down, right? Because yes, there's between our ears, there's a lot of things, and a lot of things are wrong, right? And us amongst men who've been around this industry and are pilots or technicians, director of maintenance, you name it, we hide it pretty well at times. But there's some of us that can't. There's some of us that have long fuses, short fuses, long triggers, short triggers, and we tend to have a tendency to take it to the end until it's too late, right? So I've seen a lot of friends that recently, and a really good friend of mine made a confession last year that I was saying goodbye to him. We were in Montreal, and I knew he wasn't right because I know him really well. And behold, he told me 6 months later that he was going to jump off a bridge that was just close to us. So we men are really, like I said, we're not really good about sharing our challenges and difficulties from a mental standpoint. And we got to do better at this. It's going to be difficult for the industry. I think hopefully the FAA approaches this in a manner where there's no recourse if somebody says, look, I need help, and it's a pilot that has got a long career and say is a primary provider for his family, that there's no repercussions. They can still maintain your medical. It's not impacted, and it's more of if you raise your hand, you need help, we're going to help you, and just kind of walk you through. And I guess depending on the mental state of the individual, you definitely need to keep safety at the front. But yeah, definitely we need to tackle this. We're seeing a lot of incidents in our industry, even on the commercial side, in the past 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for raising that and for highlighting, it's very cultural in especially Western society, but in many cultures that we don't outwardly express emotion, or there's only certain emotions that are acceptable, right? Anything that's too big or too hard.
Mm-hmm.
I know the millennial generation is full of a lot of people pleasers or recovering people pleasers, because it's like, let me manage your experience. So I will not express my emotions so that you can be comfortable, because I want you to be happy. And that goes for our bosses, our spouses, our friends, right? If someone cries, we're like, I don't know what to do, so the person's like, I'm fine, and I'll be right back. And, so they don't really process. And then we in turn also don't know how to connect and how to be with that. And so they become even more scary, right? The shadow of the monster is bigger than the proverbial monster anyways. So I'm really glad that you raised that. And, the FAA is making strides with their recent changes to allow pilots to seek, psychotherapy and be able to have talk therapy, which, I mean, to be honest, I think everyone should have a therapist. Like, I think from age 10, we should all learn about emotions, and we should all learn about how to communicate those emotions, like Inside Out and Inside Out 2. Amazing. I wish I had those tools when I was a kid,
Yeah,
I didn't know how to language any of those things, or know that, like, I'm supposed to feel that way, or that I should embrace all of them and not, like, pretend some don't exist. So we obviously, with each generation, get more and more awareness, and that's really great. And I'm glad that, you're finding that people are coming to you, because, that's the first step, right? We start talking about it, we normalize it. I know Austin Jarbo on LinkedIn. He's a fantastic mental health advocate. He is a private jet pilot, and he's been talking about this for years, not just now because all of a sudden there's this new thing from the FAA. And, he's very vocal and outspoken. And I think that's wonderful, because we can't also just go, yay, we did something, it's fixed, let's sweep it back under the rug and, like, focus on more productivity and, like, I'm going to make you stressed. No, this is a way of being, and we need to make those shifts so that we can have a systemic change in our industry. Yeah. Emily, how about yourself? What are the changes that you've seen in the industry, and what are some of the stigmas that you've encountered?
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say, you made me laugh when you talked about the millennial overpleaser, because I'm a recovering one.
Same.
And it is 100% like what has driven me in work and life has been people pleasing, and taking on job roles and tasks and items and working long hours that didn't apply to me, that I didn't have to do, but because I wanted to be the people pleaser. I wanted to be the person who could do it all.
Right.
And it's learning how to say, like, no, that's not my job. And if it's not your job, like, it's not my job to do it. And if you don't have somebody else to do it, it's your job. So, like, I'm not going to do it if I don't have the bandwidth, because we can't work 24/7. And that's what happens in this industry, at least for those of us who came in then, right? Like, my first job in this industry was as a flight follower for a scheduled 135 out of FLL that flew out on the Bahamas, but also to Cap Haitian and Gitmo. And we had a lot of mechanicals, a lot. And we had 2 aircraft that flew those longer routes down there, and we would just swap out parts. So sometimes, and we flew scheduled, so we flew out of the international terminal. Right. So sometimes, like, we'd be scheduled to go at 9:30 in the morning. They wouldn't leave until 10 p.m. And I would get stuck there. And then I had to stay in office until they were out of radio frequency. So sometimes I would be in office for over 14 hours. And it was, extremely stressful. But being the millennial pleaser in this industry as it is, in this industry, it was championed to be that person, right? To be on 24/7. You're in charter sales. How much can you sell? It's a numbers game. Quote, 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 quote. You're in office all day. Then you go home and then you open your laptop. I used to go to a bar and get a beer and sit with my laptop at night and continue because the more quotes I did, the more I closed. I worked on the broker side. I worked on the operator side. I would continuously quote, continuously follow up because that drove my pay. And it is a performance number. How many hours can you get on the aircraft? You get paid more. Company does better. And then same thing with flight ops, right? You're like, I'm not on, but somebody calls me. I was a scheduler. You're like, after hours, I will take the after hours shift. I had coworkers who had accidents driving because they were driving home from the office, trying to do work while driving and then getting in accidents. Like this was championed in this industry. And it is a giant problem, like, and it adds stress to you, right? So you made me laugh at that because, like, I am like the person who now says, like, I can't do 2.5 people's jobs. I can do one.
Right.
That's not my problem. I will help you fix the problem, 100%.
Yes.
But it's not my issue to take on that extra work and to take the burden and to have that affect my mental health. It's our job to be collective and say, how do we fix it so this doesn't happen? How do we put different processes in place? How do we change everything? I'm a manager and my team is remote. And I am a big person on getting out of your house. Because if you were in an office, you might walk down the hallway, go to the bathroom, go see people, you're going to chat. You're home, your work does not shut off.
No, you're glued to the
People
computer.
are just putting meetings on your calendars. You have an open space, here's a meeting, here's a meeting. All of a sudden, you're at your desk all day. And then you're getting emails after hours and weekends and nights, and it doesn't shut off. So when do you have something to like decompress? So I tell my people like that I manage, block out your calendar an hour every day. I go, you may not get to use it every day. You might get to use it 3 times a week. You might get to use 20 minutes and move it around, but put it on and try to take the breaks. Like, just do it. Don't be afraid to do it. Do it in respect to the boundaries. Because you need to recharge. So that's really big for me is how do we foster that, right? Like we're not trying to foster like be a slacker, but like we're all adults, we can all do our work, but we need to all be able to say, I can't do everything because there's more to life than work. You have family, you have hobbies, you have activities you want to do outside of work. I'm an endurance athlete, an endurance coach, so I do a little bit on the side too, but like for me, that keeps me with mental clarity. So I work out in some form. Right now it's running like 6 days a week. I woke up this morning. I have a 7-month-old. She woke up to eat 4:30. I'm out the door at 5:30. I ran 8 miles. And it just has to get done because otherwise I get more and more sucked in and I don't leave, and it's my own mental health. Right. It's such a cheesy thing we say in our industry, right? Like you have to put your oxygen mask on first before somebody else's. You hear it every time you're on the plane on a safety briefing, but like it is the truth. And like you have to be able to help yourself, your colleagues, your coworkers, and be able to like put this off. So I do see it changing. I see work cultures changing. I see safety coming to the forefront in operations. It's huge where I am, not just from the crew side, but also from all employees, mental health. There's initiatives that I see go out within awareness months and resources provided through benefits to employees and covering things like that. So I'm seeing it from, at least for me, a work perspective, and I'm hoping that's trickling down and being seen in other companies. And then I think we're also seeing the ability for us to be able to have these conversations, right? Like the stigma is being lifted because we're able to come onto a webinar here and broadcast this and talk about the importance of this. I kind of got on a tangent there.
Oh, that was awesome.
It's one of the things that we as a potential pitfall for next generation, why they're not interested in joining, because they look at everyone and they see people who are burnt out, away, tired, stressed, have no free time.
I didn't take vacation for over 4 years. I ended every year with almost all of my PTO, and I didn't get paid out on it, but I was in job roles where like I was the only one doing it, and if I wasn't there, who was going to do it? So I never took vacation time ever. And I would like take my laptop to the doctor's office and be working, in the waiting room. And then while I'm waiting, and then before I go home, like I never shut off. And I think that's something that, the new generation sees that and they're like, why do I want to do that? And
time
like I can make the same amount of money not doing that probably. Like, so why do I want to give that much to it? And it's finding the balance.
Yeah, it's time is a currency. Health is a currency, right? The way that you feel every single day. And I was listening to, the Stress Less, Accomplish More book again this morning. And one of the things she mentioned is, we would never go a full day without charging this thing, right? And when it's sitting there charging, it's not just sitting there. A function is actually happening. Something is happening so that we can then use it again later, right? And it's the same thing when we sit to meditate or we do some mindfulness practice or we go on that vacation. We're not doing nothing. We're not just being there. We are recharging ourselves so that we can perform at the top of our game again later, rather than getting into this like peak state and then burning out and crashing and then needing a sabbatical and then rinse and repeat for, the next decade. And there are so many people in our industry who have had heart attacks and strokes, aneurysms in their 20s and 30s. I mean, that should not be happening. Shouldn't even be happening in your 40s or 50s, right? And it's really interesting. She was describing, these biological processes that take place. So when we're stressed and we get the cortisol dump, what happens? We become more acidic in our gut because we don't need to digest food if we're going to go run away from something or fight something. Yeah. We also release our bowels so that we're lighter for running. And the acid that's released into our bloodstream is so we don't taste good in case we're bitten. And now that's flowing through your bloodstream all day long. And now think about being in a chronic state. No wonder we have so many chronic issues because we're not designed to be in that state all the time. And yet that's exactly what we have. And, it's totally celebrated to be grind. How many, raise your hand. Have you ever been like, oh, I'm so busy, right? As like a badge of honor. Yeah. Oh, definitely. I know people watching will have the same thing. And at one point too, I was like, it's almost like a drug, right? You get addicted to it and you're like, yeah, I'm so important because I'm so busy. Now I'm like, my phone will be off for 2 days or what have you. And obviously that's not something you can do all the time in our industry. But if you're on your vacation, you should do that. You should not be on your phone, because I was the opposite of you, Emily. I took all of my leave, but I worked the entire time. Every day there'd be something that I would do, and I'd be like, oh, I just want to keep my finger on the pulse. But I'd end up like full on working and not actually enjoying myself. And it was just, I had a prettier view.
That's what happened when I take sick days. I would take a sick day because I'd be sick, but I would still be attending meetings, reading emails because I couldn't miss it. We'll do these like half work days. Like I'm here, but I don't have the bandwidth to like go above and beyond. But I would like put in a sick day.
Yep.
It's still ends stuff.
And she talks about that in the book too, in The Sharp Solution, about how we're literally addicted to the stress cycle. And the hormone cocktail that's released. And so, it's the other thing that is celebrated in our industry, what you mentioned, like, oh, I'm going to go to the bar and work.
Yeah.
Every social event is involving alcohol and people's first question is, where's the bar? Yeah. We need to have different tools to allow ourselves to unwind so that we can decouple networking and being social with alcohol. Even if you're an introvert, you don't need the alcohol. You just need to not be so stressed.
We could go to yoga. We could go run. We could go to the gym and lift weight. Like we could go for a walk. There's so many other things we could go do.
And actually, the science now is showing too, you going for a walk and doing 10,000 steps a day is better for your body than you running twice a week. Or like smashing yourself so hard and then having these like huge periods of recovery in between and just jacking up your nervous system and flooding your system with adrenaline and cortisol. And so we don't have to do the extremes. Our industry though, that's how books have, the trips are booked, right? It's like on the edge, last minute, or phone call at 1 a.m. Things are changing. And it's exciting for maybe like 6 months or a year. And then after that, you're like, no, you get jaded by it. But we can take the control back, and still, even if our companies operate in that kind of manner, we can find our ways of existing within that where it feels good for us and we are showing up recharged. And if we can't, my advice to you is find another job, because maybe that job was great for you 10 years ago and it matched your energy levels and what you wanted. But now you're in a different situation. Maybe you have 3 kids, or maybe I still love traveling. But now I want to go like camping. I want to take my dog everywhere. If it's like on the other side of the world, I'm like, yeah, it'd be cool. But like, unless I'm going to go for a month, that jet lag is just not worth it, and I never thought I'd have these thoughts, but here I am, like turning down some of these trips, and people are like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't need to escape. Right.
Sure.
And I think that's the difference. And so finding where you're at in life and making sure that you're in the right role. Maybe you're still on the right bus, but you're just in the wrong seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aasiya, what's been your journey?
It was actually hard listening to Emily, because I went through that journey when I was in the finance industry, and that was almost an expectation, to be working weekends, to have that FaceTime, to, everyone gave us everything to do. And it was it was good that I had that experience, because honestly, Sarah, when you were at leadership and you were talking about your burnout, and it really resonated with me too, and I connected with it, because I went through a time where I couldn't sleep for days. It was bad, and I felt it was such an odd feeling, not being like lying awake, because you day in and day out, and I realized that this is gonna be very bad for me in some way. I'm gonna get some kind of condition, and showing up to work, and I was making more mistakes, and the meetings, my voice was all jumbled. I mean, experiencing firsthand what stress and overwork can do to you. When I got into a leadership role at FCI, the first thing I told myself is we need to have a culture that recognizes what Richard Branson says is, take care of your employees and they'll take care of your clients. Mm-hmm. And I have people come to me all the time, my direct reports, hey, I need a personal day, or hey, it's summer, I really want to sign up my son for baseball for 2 hours a day. I talked to such and such person, they can cover for me. And those are instances in our company where they're all okay. And I want to have mentally healthy people. If someone's having a rough day and they're like, hey, I just need to log off early, by all means, like I recommend you do it. And, to Emily's point, we're getting all my direct reports, we're getting their summer plans and their summer vacations. And one of our managers, I was talking to him the other day and I was like, hey, I noticed you don't have anything on the calendar for your summer holidays. He's like, yeah, no, I really need to put something. I was like, yeah, you do. You need to take a break. So just being mindful, because everyone here is, we have such an amazing team, just business aviation, Sarah, as you've mentioned, everyone are such type A. We're so high performers, service excellence, white glove service. We're always trying to go above and beyond, having experienced what that can do to one's mental health, one's physical health, I really try to keep an eye open to ensure that people on our team are not getting burned out, and having some sort of a balance so that they can check out and just recharge, as you said. So I think all of that is so important. And I'm happy I had that experience, because now I know how to create a culture that is focused on happiness and mental health, because I think happiness is really, not something artificial that we can purchase, but happiness is a choice. It's a habit. It's something that we have to commit to every day. But yeah, that's kind of has been my journey and how that's impacted how I lead our organization.
I love that. And I love that you're actually checking in with your team and saying, hey, I don't see any personal things on here. Like, go take something. Go, even if you just, are hanging out in your garden at home, like you have that time for yourself. One of the coaches I worked with when I first started my business, he's like, okay, we're going to map out the year. And of course, we're all ready to like map out launches or whatever. And he's like, what holidays are you taking this year? What are you doing with family? That's what goes on first. And we build around that, because then you can actually plan and manage your energy. You can plan and manage your resources. And it's really powerful. And when we treat our people like people and we understand that this is how they can be the best, then we're giving them a gift. We're also giving ourselves a gift. And it creates really loyal employees. And, our industry thrives on that loyalty and that commitment to service and to excellence. And so it's a really self-fulfilling prophecy, and what you put in is what you're going to get back out. So I love that you're doing that with the team.
Yeah, no, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. We have really low turnover here. And I do think it's because we really want to make sure everyone's happy here. And even if, we've had people come in for one role and move to another role because they realize, hey, we're really not happy doing this. And one of the interview questions I always like to ask is, what do you not want to do? In a role? So,
that's a great question to ask. And sometimes people don't know the answer, but it's important to know that answer.
I had the sweetest admin assistant many years ago who told me, she's like, I'll pretty much do everything except for, I really don't want to clean toilets. So no, you're not going to be doing that. But no, I always want to ensure that where we're putting people is they're going to be happy and they're going to prosper. And I think that's so important for us to be thinking about that.
Absolutely. Because knowing your own limits, that self-awareness is really crucial to succeed. If you're going to grow from being just a single, like, individual contributor, that's a star employee, it'll only get you so far. Then you need to have enough self-awareness to be able to communicate well with other people and be able to like manage yourself, manage a team, a project, etc. And knowing where you shine and where you don't shine is important, so that when you put your hand up for something, you can say, right, I want to lead this, but I want so-and-so to take this component of it because that's their genius. And, I'm going to do this part. And you really start to play to your strengths. And that is also part of the mental performance game, if we will call it that, and then that leads to mental health. I made a joke before we went live, right? We have this weird thing with mental health, like, oh, you're seeing a therapist, or like, oh, you have a coach, like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Or, oh, you meditate, that's quite woo-woo. But it's like, I don't shame you for taking a shower. In fact, I encourage you to take a shower, especially if you've gone to the gym or you've just been around the horses, or, you've been out on the tarmac all day. Like, please go take another one, even if you took one this morning. And that's how we keep our bodies clean, right? I encourage you to wash your clothes. Wear a uniform. You're not going to wear the same one 5 days in a row, right? Because it's not going to smell great. It's the same thing with meditation. It's not like you did it once, you're done, or you journaled once, you're done. This is a practice. This is something for maintenance. And actually, Austin made a really great post the other day on LinkedIn about aircraft going in for scheduled maintenance, routine maintenance. And then there's the AOG events. We're pretty much the same thing. We need scheduled maintenance in all forms and varieties. And then sometimes things break, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. And then we need to downtime to repair those things before we can go back into our normal schedule. And so we can use all the aviation analogies there are, but I thought that was a really great one, because we live and breathe that every day. And that's exactly what we need to.
Absolutely.
I'm going to pop this book up here on the screen, and I'll share the link in the comments, because this book is like designed, really, when I first listened to it, I was so skeptical, you guys. I remember like even walking with my arms like crossed and my eyes kind of squinted, like she's such whatever. They're not going to come to me to meditate. This is like for people who smell incense and whatever. And they don't deal with the people we deal with. And there's no way they understand. And then like I'm listening to it. And by the end of it, I was like, okay, well, if this top person and this top person and Oprah and this NFL player and this doctor are doing it, like maybe I can do it too. And it's incredible to just be still for a period of time, and you don't have to go into lotus position and wear yoga pants. You can be in your office at your office chair and just close your eyes and focus on your breath for 3 minutes. Do it for 1 minute just to start, right? And you build up the muscle and you go from there. It's something now I do twice a day, and I actually stopped doing the afternoon meditation because I got a bit lazy. I was just doing the morning one, and I've just brought the afternoon one back in, and like, oh my goodness, it's night and day difference of just having that kind of reset. Because what she was talking about is like when we sleep, that's our brain doing a lot of processing, but our body doesn't always. It's not like for the body's resting. Whereas when we meditate, that's the body energy that we're getting back. And so, we're filtering a little bit there too. But it's really incredible to really dive into the science and understand how it works. So, some of us are really logical. We need that. And there's a lot of research out there to prove what meditators have done for thousands of years. So I'd like to understand, do any of you have a meditation practice or mindful practice? What are some of the things that helped you get started so that for those who are listening that may be on the fence, they might be willing to just give it a try? So, Aasiya, let's start with you.
I do meditate in the morning when I wake up for about 30 minutes. It's been a routine of mine. It was actually one of the things that helped me get my sleep back. So I've been doing it for a really long time. And then another thing, I am trying to incorporate, after reading Dr. Heidi's book, a session during the day. Because as you said, Sarah, so many successful people do it. It's, it does kind of, and I do, before I meditate, I do not look at my phone. I'm so tempted. So it's so hard to resist. And I'm not good at it about every day, but, to just not look at all the chaos that's happening in the inbox and just really, and I meditate before the sun rises. So it kind of feels really peaceful when it's dark outside and everything's quiet. So it's kind of nice. But I would like to incorporate a second session as well. At the end of my night, I actually think of 100 things that I'm thankful for before I go to bed. And I literally have my counter out on my phone. And, some days are not as great as other days. But when you force yourself to think about all the blessings that, I can walk, or, I was able to get in my car and get to work instead of, taking the bus. So just even small things like that really kind of helps you calm down and be like, hey, it wasn't that bad of a day. I'm really happy and grateful for all of the blessings we have. And then I read after that, and it might just be for 5 minutes, but I definitely, that's kind of my routine.
I love that. And I love that you make this list, even though it might be kind of hard. You're forcing yourself to look for those blessings. And I put in here blessings. I heard this on the podcast recently. So it's the blessing with a lesson, and when we really look for it, we can find it. Anything that we've been through might have been super hard, but you find the silver lining, and it's important to recognize those things, because then you can find more, so that you're priming your brain for the next day to already be looking for the wonderful things that you have or that are happening. And that's really powerful.
Yeah. And you go to sleep happy knowing that, so it kind of just helps with the mood. And I think it kind of helps me fall asleep.
And, to your point earlier about happiness in particular, happy is an emotion. It is one emotion of many. And there are, you can feel blissful, you can feel joy, you can feel gratitude, you can feel compassionate, you can feel pissed, you can feel angry, you can feel sad, you can feel fatigued, you can feel exhausted, right? They're all different nuances and different feelings and sensations that we get. So if we're only chasing happy, that's a very bland existence, and it's not going to be the case all the time, right?
Yeah.
Or you might be happy in this moment, and then something happens, and now you feel another emotion. You might cycle through 10 within half an hour, and then in the aggregate, you're like, oh, but I'm not really happy. So, it's like, how do you quantify that? So understanding that, other emotions are also good, and allowing those to come in is important too, so that, you can, I actually switched. Instead of happy, now my only goal is peace. Does this bring me peace or does it not? And if
Yeah.
it's not going to be in the aggregate a peaceful thing, then I'm like, maybe I'm not interested in that anymore. Right? Because I might be happy in some moments of it, but it also might be extremely chaotic and stressful and all the other things, but it's not really the state that I'm seeking, right? And so you can be very intentional with those choices. And I have a great app called How We Feel, and it is by Stanford or Yale. I always get it wrong. I think it's Stanford. Scientists, engineers, and psychologists. And it gives you kind of like Inside Out. You've got an emotion to a color, or sorry, the feeling. This is pleasant or unpleasant, high energy, low energy. And then you select the shape, and it gives you a little lesson on it. And you can then start to see and aggregate your emotional experience and your emotional range. And you can have friends on there. So sometimes, my friends will share their emotions with me, and I can be like, ooh, so-and-so is really pissed off right now. Maybe I'll message them and just be like, you okay? You got everything under control? But it's really helped me to understand, our brains always remember the negative. Now I can look at this and go, you know what? My unpleasant experience, whether it was high energy or low energy, actually accounts for only 12% of my overall experience. And I've been logging for 9 months now, 4 times a day. Sometimes I don't get every time, but it makes me go, oh, you know what? Things are not that bad. Like, there's been some intense moments, but overall, like, I'm actually having a very pleasant experience. And so it can really also help you to focus on a different thing. And so for those of you who have kids, this is also very powerful, because then you can start to have language with your children around, this is not a good emotion or a bad emotion. It's just, was it intense? Was it high energy? Was it low energy? And did it feel pleasant, or was it kind of unpleasant? They can start to frame their existence and their experience in a different way than, this was good and that is bad, because that's how we got here, right? Not actually being able to have language for it.
Yeah.
That's cool too.
Yeah, go and download it. Everyone who's watching the live with us now, or like, you can add me as a friend. I'm happy to share my emotional experiences with you. Full transparency. But it is really fun to just understand yourself better, and to also go, hey, this word doesn't quite fit based on the description of this word that they've given me. That's not exactly how I feel. So let me find something else. And as you expand the vocabulary, you start to expand and understand your experience differently. Emily, what are some of the things that you've incorporated? Do you have a meditation practice? I know obviously you have a young one right now, so that's probably shifting.
So I do before bed. I'm a person who has a hard time shutting my brain off. So I feel like it makes me feel grounded. It just brings me back down, and then I'm able to shut off and I go to sleep. So for me, it's like Shavasana in bed, like, and then go to bed. So,
Do you do like a body scan, or is there anything specific that you do to help yourself? Like,
I'll do a body scan. I also have this like a headset thing.
Okay.
And it'll talk you through stuff or put meditations on, and it vibrates and helps like calm down.
Oh, that's cool. What's that called?
It's made by the same people as like hold on, let me get the name.
You're gonna have to share with us. I'm all about trying new gadgets. Like, I have the Whoop to track my stress levels and all sorts of heart rate variability and everything. And this is actually what's helped me a lot into understanding my nervous system and how I can train and meditate accordingly. So like, on the days that I don't get enough sleep, right? But I've meditated, I'll still have a very high recovery score. And so that's showing me that I don't need always to like have the sleep as my recovery. I can do other practices that can help boost the score. So that's really, really powerful for me, because I used to, he used to just be like, I'm going to do the hard thing and lift the heavy weights and run the, very much like you, Emily, with the competitive athleticism coming into play, right?
Yeah. But so beyond that, and so the other thing for me really big, and it does come from the competitive athleticism for me though, is, I mean, one, that is my like mental stress reliever. Like if I go for a workout, like I will process a lot of stuff. I'll come back and I'll like have clarity. I'll have, whether it's personal life, work, whatever it is, I can feel like I am, with like giant writer's block for like life, and I can go and like work out, and that's my time where I shut off from the world and I process through everything. So there's a book called The Brave Athlete, and it's been a really big help for me. I had a triathlon coach force me to read it, but he gave everyone to read it, and it was before I was like into like reading stuff, like a decade ago. But the main point of it is that you have three brains. You have your ancient chimp brain that keeps you alive. You have a modern professor brain that like navigates the civilized world. And then you have a computer brain that processes and accesses your memories and runs on habits. So it's like, how do you calm down and rise to the occasion? And how do you work through these things, whether it's an athletic pursuit or your day-to-day? Because so many people who do endurance sports are type A and are highly driven in their professional life. So a lot of the book translates into normal life and things that we would use. But
I love
yeah.
I also love the title. You left out the second part of the title. That's what makes it.
Yeah, it is. I just was like, I gotta remember what my head thing is. I feel like it's from Hyper, but I'm not sure. But anyways, yeah, it's like a USB thing, and you can have a thing where it like heats up a little too when it applies, so that it just like calms your whole brain down.
That's really cool.
Really?
All right. I think this is getting added to cart through this webinar. Amazing. Carlos, how about you? What are some of the practices that you have that you found really helpful?
Yeah, for me, Sarah is really just so devoted to my religion. Just prayer in the morning, prayer in the evening, prayer throughout the day, especially when I'm having a horrible day. Just stepping aside, just doing a prayer. Obviously, going to Sunday services, just being in the moment, just away from all those things that our minds are constantly going through, and just taking the time to meditate, really, and just grounding yourself. Right? We go, our minds are so busy all the time, and just taking the time to be thankful, to be in the moment with just spiritually, kind of reconnecting and then grounding yourself. That's where I find myself the most at times when times are tough, and I've learned to just really that's my go-to place when things are getting out of hand for me mentally, or where I can just grasp it and control it. So that's kind of my go-to place, and just take the time to really do it, do right, do the prayers, and then just kind of get back into it.
Yeah, I love it. And you can see this, we all have a different practices and different ways of being able to process our stress. And at different times also, we can bring in different tools, right? And I think, Carlos, you mentioned a good point. Sometimes we don't have a lot of time on our hands, and we might have a, 30-minute practice, 1 hour practice, and just shortening that down so that we still are doing something while we're traveling, having kind of that non-negotiable line. That's also very important so that we can continue to get that recharge, even if it's not all the way up to the full capacity. But for the environment we're in, we're still being able to get through that and be able to face the challenges and not lose our cool or, get out of that even state that you mentioned before.
Oh yeah, I think that's been just kind of a survival mode for me over the years. It's first of all, acknowledging it, dealing with it in the way, in the aspect that you're able to recharge or recuperate, and then continuing to move forward or fight through whatever you're fighting. I think that's been successful for me in my career and my mental state mainly.
Yes, I love that. Now, Aasiya, I know you have to go in a few minutes. I just
Yeah.
wanted to check in with you before you signed off and ask you why you think this mental health conversation, mental performance conversation is so important for our industry, and also how you might encourage other people who want some help in this area. What are some of the things that they can do to start finding it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important because, as Sarah, you mentioned, time is limited, and it's the most valuable asset we have. And you don't want to look back and be like, my gosh, I didn't enjoy that time. I didn't, I kept telling myself that I'll be happy or I'll feel mentally healthy when I achieve this success or I achieve that success. And I feel growing up that is the culture that we're surrounded by. But the reality is we need to take hold and charge of our mental health now and be peaceful, as you said, now, because, we're not going to get that time back again. Emily, I look at my 3-year-old now and those nights were so tough and, he's so big now. And I was like, gosh, I wish I would have enjoyed that more, but I was so focused on, okay, get him fed, get him, change his diaper and get to work. And it's like, you don't really, you just want to take hold of that time because you're not going to have it back. And you want to look back and be like, yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I was happy then. I was peaceful then. And I think it's really important in our industry, more so than so many other industries, because all of us deal with safety and deal with, people's lives are our responsibility. We have a fiduciary responsibility. And really, if we're mentally healthy, we're going to be able to deliver a safer and more excellent service. So I think it's so important. And I really hope that with dialogues like these and other conversations that we're having in the industry, whether online, like something like this, or offline, we're all working on building a culture that it's completely okay to say that, hey, I need a personal day, or hey, I feel overwhelmed right now. Yesterday was a tough day for me. There was a lot of trips that came in. Is it okay if I can, check out early, and if anything comes in, I'll come back online? Yes, absolutely. Those things are okay. Our clients are still being taken care of, and I really hope that other companies will adopt that type of culture, so that we all can have that peace of mind.
That's beautifully said. Thank you. And as we have more dialogues like these and put these ideas out there, we're openly speaking about it, it means that they can actually start to take place, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know until you act, right? And maybe your company doesn't have a policy yet.
Yes.
And you go and you have a good rapport with your boss and you ask this question and they might go, yeah, of course. I don't have much going on today. And like, I can take care of it. Like they can recognize that you really worked hard for those missions the day before and you need that reset. And so that's how we begin. That's how we have the ripple effect. And that's how we can start to, if all of us as drops in the ocean come together, we can be the tsunami wave. Right. And so we can really start to be that tidal force of change.
No, I think that's so true. And I do sincerely appreciate the opportunity, and what a pleasure to be here with all of you all. And if I can be of resource to anyone who's out there, please feel free to contact me. And thank you again, Sarah, for putting this on. This is such an important topic. We all appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here too. And thank you for gifting us with your time and your busy day. The rest of us will stay on for a little while longer and continue the conversation, but I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Yes, indeed. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Carlos, from your perspective as well, obviously you're on the maintenance side, you're also a pilot, and what you mentioned before about, being a man and with the culture piece, I'd like to ask you, what are the benefits that you see here in shifting the culture, and how do you think we can start to get through to some of the older males who didn't grow up with this narrative, who maybe didn't have the tools or who's still discovering these tools? How can we as women, how can other leaders, how can the younger generation, what are some of the ways that we can connect to bridge the gap so that we can make this more of a safe conversation, a psychologically safe environment, so that we can all move forward together?
So that's an excellent question that I wish that it would be simple to tackle, but I can tell you that when I was coming up as a young A&P, as a pilot, I grew up around, the baby boomers, right? And that generation, they were just, because the previous generation taught them that they just got to work and work until they're done, right? Until they bring them out on the stretcher. Unfortunately, that's the way that my parents are that way, right? That my dad just retired, but he's still working. And that's just the way that they grew up, that they came up, right? And our culture here in America, in the United States, and I'm multicultural. I was born in South America, grew up here in the States. And, life in South America is more laid back. There's people are barely working 3, 4, 5 hours a day. Here in America, it's different. We got to work, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day. But I'm seeing that shift little by little. Unfortunately, that's where our industry is hurting right now, where that baby boomer generation is retiring in mass forces. So now we're seeing those technicians, those pilots that used to be in place and they worked hard all the time. They're no longer with us. So now we're trying to cover that gap of not having sufficient pilots, technicians, flight attendants as well. And now we got this new generation, my generation and younger generations that are coming in with a different mindset. It's like, no, we don't have to work 10, 16 hours a day. We can really do time management and do things correctly. So I'm seeing that shift slowly but surely. And, you're seeing individuals like me or younger that are becoming DOMs or director of aviation as well. And we're seeing that the shift slowly but surely, especially in business aviation. On the commercial side, they're still, because they're more heavily regulated, they can see that. But for us in Part 91, 135, 145 is a little different. So we're seeing that shift, that generation of, you got to be here all day. We're not seeing that as much anymore. For example, I don't have to, here in my hangar. I come in, I just have my priorities, I get it done, and I go do other things. And that's important. Now we're not seeing individuals just hitting the grind and being there all day. And for us, man, now in this generation, we're in business aviation, commercial side, because I also have friends there. We're seeing that trend, and which is good. We need that, which is definitely long term is going to improve our mental state. Because I remember just coming up, it's tough. It was, you're expected to be there all day, even longer, and which that took away from being at home with the family. And luckily for me, I was blessed with my wife being at home and raising our kids, which is important for me. But just took away a lot, that time away from being with the family and being a dad at home all the time, which nowadays is different. Now you see more and more men, working from home, which is great. I mean, raising kids. I have two brothers that do that now, and I think for me that's amazing. I mean, that we got to be also an integral part of our families, especially our kids, and not being at work all the time. And so I'm seeing the changes, which is good. I think that we need to do a better job at speaking our minds. Yes, we do. We need that's a part that we men need to be better at, just to speak our minds. The thing is that the things that we need to speak sometimes is the audience, who we're talking to. For me, sometimes a perfect stranger works, but I do have a lot of good friends in the industry that I trust, and I can easily express some of my concerns, either personally or just in general with the industry. And I'm actually working closely with one of the OEMs and working with their issues that they see at their service centers. And a lot of those issues are propagated by us, the operator, that we're putting more stress. We're asking for the airplanes to come out faster, on budget, and it's not feasible, because and that pressure comes from me because my owner is asking me he or she wants the airplane back at a faster time than was previously quoted. So I'm kind of creating that awareness, like, look, sometimes we director of maintenances, we need to do a better job at managing that, because if we induce that stress to you, you're not going to be able to perform. Then now we're going to have issues, and we're going to have discussions and arguments about, you know, budget and quality and all those things. So I'm very hopeful. I'm seeing things are changing, which is good. I mean, we've been in a stressful moment for the past 4 years. But I'm very hopeful, and I want to be an advocate for that as well. As Asia said, for those of you that you might need someone to talk to, I'm here. I mean, people that I talk to, I'm an open book. I love to share my stories and my experiences and what I see in the industry, and because at the end of the day, we all have something in common, and if we can help each other, it's going to help our industry even more.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for also offering to be there if people need to reach out, because I mean, ultimately, that's what people are afraid of asking for help, right? They think that there's not really anywhere to turn, or that, you know, they don't want to be a burden, right? The millennial generation, again, probably this is a big part. The Gen X and above, it's just not knowing that that's an option. And so just having the open dialogue and really embodying it. You know, I love that you brought up the family component and what your brothers are doing, and how, you know, we have a lot more hands-on. I was at CJI London last year, and one of the gentlemen, I believe he worked for Avanode, but he lives in Sweden. And he said that if, you know, men get 3 months paternity leave,
Mhm.
and that if he did not take the paternity leave, it would be like shamed. Like,
No.
oh, you're not on your paternity leave, you're back at work. Oh, like, okay. You know,
So
like that's the attitude. It's like, I want that attitude over here. You know, none of this like get back to the grind. You know, you've just popped out a baby. Great. 24 hours. I want you back in the office. You know, it's really interesting. Obviously, culture is a big part of it. You know, we have different working styles with hybrid and remote and all of these things. But I think realizing that you don't have to do it all, or if you want to be a stay-at-home parent, no matter your gender, awesome, do it. Like, you're going to be happier, and so will your kids, because, you know, that's a way of being. You don't have, some people realize like, hey, I don't like working 80 hours a week and killing myself for this 6-figure salary to be, you know, paying off all these things that I don't even want or need. You know, I'd much rather be, you know, Emily, you and I were having this conversation the other day just about like different ways of being and living and what brings us joy. And people in aviation are always so, I mean, I love it because we're so passionate and like sound in the sky, and we're like, what is it? Where is it? You know, but we can have other passions too, and we can find other ways of being that don't require the same levels of stress. And so finding what works for you in this season of life is going to be what ultimately makes you more productive and a better employee anyway. You know, maybe it's not a for everything, and that nothing is ever a for everything, right? We tend to think that way, but nothing ever is. And so can you just do this, you know, give yourself a set period of time. You know, let me try out something for 6 months or for 6 days.
So, and something else, Sarah, that I think we're seeing here in corporate America is we're seeing that shift, right? We're seeing where the pandemic forced us to be at home, and many states experienced this, where employees were told to stay home, don't come home until we tell you so. And as we discuss here, that created a different culture now. A lot of employers are seeing that some employees are being more productive by staying at home, but at the same time it's bad, right? But now we're seeing a culture shift here in America, where we're forced to be at home. We now create a new home culture and work culture, and we're seeing things kind of shifting. I've seen some social media stuff where, you know, they took a picture of people laying out, like it looked like Grand Central Park, people just laying out in the sun. It's like, here's all the workers, you know,
because we're all knowledge workers now, right?
Yeah,
we don't like in factories, so it's a different style of working. It's a different way of being. And if you think about like when we were very physical in our labor, we needed a lot of that physical rest. Now we're very mental in our labor. We need that meditation. We need that mental rest so that we can still perform, right? And it's going to continue to evolve with all the technology advances that we get. If there's one constant, it's change. And there's Morgan Housel wrote The Psychology of Money as well as Same as Ever. And as Same as Ever, he's talking about the things that always the same. Like, what's the best-selling candy bar in this year versus like 50 years later? Snickers. So that's the same. Like, what are humans always going to want? Amazon will literally make strategy and decisions based on what we will always want, not what's the new fad, not what's the new thing we can get, but what are we going to want throughout all of those things that come through. And so it's important to understand that about our human behavior also, so that we can give ourselves some grace when things change and we don't want to, or when things change and they don't change, but we want them to, right? Both are going to happen. And it's important to, have compassion and understanding for that. And I see Chris Hicks here is joining us live. And he said that, it's about making people understand. It's not about competing against competitors. It's about making yourself better, which then is that ripple effect. So others can be better too.
That's very true.
So,
yeah, and that's
sorry, this is really bothering me. Like, really bothering me. If you are a female who works and you're listening to this, it is 100% okay to want to have a kid and want to have a job and contribute to your household, have retirement, have 401k, and put your kid in daycare, because you cannot work a job well with a kid at home. My kid goes to daycare. She absolutely loves it. I call it baby school. She giggles and laughs there. She is there. I get photos. She comes home. She's learning things. They work with her all day. They're starting solids with her. She loves it. She's sad when she leaves. Weekends, she's not as happy because she loves the entertainment and her friends.
Right.
So do not feel like it is the women's job. And if you're a man who thinks you can stay home and work a job with no childcare, you need childcare. You can't do a job and watch a child. It's one or the other. Like, it is. Because as a boss, like, I can tell you, it's one or the other. Like, I can't do my job. And like, my husband works in corporate America and has 400 people under him. And the people who are constantly about to be on the chopping block are the people who think they can do this. And when they do layoffs, those are the ones who go because they're not doing their work.
Right.
But like, do not feel
of that ideal
staying home, because that really bothered me. Like, if you want to be a woman and you want to stay home with your kids, 100%, that's amazing. But if you feel like for me, like, I only had 4 weeks maternity leave. My husband got 12 weeks paternity. So corporate America gave him 12 weeks. It was awesome. And then I saved 3 weeks PTO and I had 7 weeks. But at the end of the 7 weeks, I needed to have a break. Like, I'm a better mom when I come to work.
Yeah.
I spend mornings with my kid. I have a running stroller with her. We go to the barn. She comes and sees my horse and do things. Like, she giggles when I pick her up. I leave work at 4 o'clock to get her. I drop her off at 8:30. But do what works for you. So I'm sorry. That was just something that really bothered me.
I'm so glad that you said that too, because so many people think that they should do it all or that they can do it all, and you can't. And you don't need to want to either.
I thought I could. At the beginning, I was like, I'm not sending her daycare. I'm keeping her home. Right. And I quickly realized my mental health was suffering hugely by trying to do everything and failing at everything. But I also don't want to put the burden of all financialness on my husband, because it's an expensive world and it's getting more and more expensive. So to me, I'm not going to put his mental health at risk by telling him you're fully responsible to bring in everything to cover the lifestyle we want.
Yeah.
So
it's important for everyone to find what works for them. Right. And like you said, it's choose what's going to be good for you and be okay with it. Don't shame yourself for whatever you choose. And I had a mentor.
You do you, I do me, and everybody be happy because everybody is happy.
Yeah.
I
had a mentor
do whatever makes you happy.
In banking. And so he works, similar, very high stress. This was in Hong Kong. And anytime he had one of his females that would then start talking about having a baby or they got pregnant, he would have a conversation with them and then he'd give them one of 2 books. But basically this, there was a woman at Harvard and you know, it was her whole journey was like almost got tenure, and then she got pregnant, and then she was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, do I want to stay home? Do I want to like be tenured? Do I want, and you know, she had this whole dilemma, which in her mind before she got pregnant would never be a dilemma, but then everything changed. And then so she decided to embark on this journey of studying the happiness of children and the successful, like what they go on to do in life. And the best children, the happiest children, the ones that like have the most ease and success in their lives are the ones whose parents, particularly the mother, if they wanted to go to work, they went back to work. And if they wanted to stay home, they stayed home. That was the indicator of success. If the mother went back to work because she felt like she had to or she needed to for necessity, but that wasn't really the like optimal choice, then the children and the mother suffered. And if she stayed home because she thought that's what she was supposed to do, but she really wanted to go back to work, that was even worse. And you know, and again, mental health of the mother and the happiness of the children over longevity. Like she went and studied them 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later. So ultimately, you putting your mental health first in this scenario is going to help not only you, but also your child. And then, you know, how they tackle the world. Because if you think about it, you're also modeling like being in alignment versus doing what you think you should do or what others tell you you should want. And that's a large part of why in society, we wake up one day with all the things we ever wanted. You know, I'm talking about myself. And, you know, you worked really hard to get there. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I don't know. I don't like any of this. None of this feels good. You know, you're not in alignment. You're just following the flow of what everybody else tells you you should want. And so getting back into alignment should always be the goal, because that's going to give you better output, whether it's your personal life, your relationships, your parenting, your martial arts, your gardening, your work, your business. Like all of those things are going to be better if you are in alignment. When you're out of alignment, everything else is going to suffer. And so that's really the foundational piece. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Emily, because, you know, sometimes we think we can do it all, or we tell ourselves we can, but then when we own the reality of like, no, and that's okay. This is how I'm a better parent. This is how I'm a better employee, a better spouse, a better human. Then you can just go forward with that plan and do it confidently rather than like shaming yourself for nothing. You know, that's not necessary.
Yeah. But like my mom stayed home and she was happy, but
Right.
she did volunteer work and she did, you know, that type of stuff. And she absolutely loved it. So like, I am all for like, if you want to stay home, stay home, but like, don't feel if you want to go to work, you shouldn't go to work.
Yeah. Or that you shouldn't have childcare. I mean, think about anyone who wants to refute this fact, just think about COVID. And if you had to homeschool your children, like you couldn't homeschool your children and effectively work. There was a lot of like friction at that time. You know, I watched my colleagues really struggle with that. You know, I mean, imagine being a 5-year-old or 7-year-old trying to pay attention to Zoom. It's impossible even as adults, right? So that's an important component of this whole mental health conversation also. You know, it's very, very crucial. So thank you for raising that.
Yeah. And just like, I'll be honest, I have a horse. I grew up showing competitively and I absolutely love it. I work hard enough to have a horse. It's always been my motivation. Don't get in trouble growing up because my horse will get taken away. Have a certain GPA, keep my horse. Like for me, like my motivation to be successful is to have a horse.
Yeah. I love it.
And it works. Like, so it drives me. Like, it's a hobby. It's a passion. It's something, though, that I know is really expensive. And I'm like, I'm not putting that on my husband because why should he pay? Because I want something really expensive.
Right.
And I want a kid and I want this. Like, so there are things where you're like, okay, like, what makes you happy mentally? And then how do you figure out how to make it happen?
Yeah. You work backwards, right? Yeah. You're like, okay, these are the things that are ideal. These are my non-negotiable. How can I get there? Right.
Yeah.
And it's really important to be clear on those things, because otherwise any road can take you there. And then you just find yourself somewhere and you might be like, oh, it's not really that. And then the goalpost keeps moving. Right.
Yeah.
So the more self-aware you can be and the more clarity you can bring, then, you doing this, then showing up at work with that clarity, that inspires other people around you to start getting that clarity. Then, especially when you're leading a team, you can help coach them through that also, because we can often see things that other people cannot, right? We are so great at offering the objective reflection to others, but when we look in the mirror ourselves, we're like, oh no, I didn't gain 20 pounds, or I didn't, like I didn't age 20 years. No, that didn't happen. The proverbial like cat looking in the mirror, seeing a lion. We're very good at the stories. And so having
Yeah.
people around us that can help us cut through that. And, then we can be in a much more confident and joyful place, maybe not happy, but it's going to be peaceful. We're going to have more fun with it. We're going to get out of our own head.
It definitely, I think it's a good, and that like goes back right to work. So like, how do you take that into your work mentality?
Yeah.
And it's a full circle there.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is a full circle. When we are having these conversations, so many people are like, okay, but Sarah, if you were going to present this to my company, what would you tell them? And I'm like, the same thing. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, the tools do not change just because you now slap business in front of it or corporate in front of it. We are still people, and we are dealing with emotional creatures in the workplace. So the same tools apply.
Yeah.
And okay, we can put a suit on it if you want, but it's going to be the same thing, right? And so it's always finding those connection points on how do you use this at work, and then how do you bring it home and use it with your spouse, with your friends, with your kids, with your parents. That is the linchpin, right? That is the pivot point at which you can be yourself, and then like no matter what direction you're facing, be able to handle what's coming towards you. And so that's why this conversation underpins everything. It's not just mental health for my sport performance or mental health so I can be more productive at work and do more things. It's just so that you can be you and bring your genius, your skill set out into the world, rather than like constantly trying to like catch up and do more because you're thinking that's what you're supposed to do.
And like the schedule maintenance, right? It's like you're one-on-one. So you have one-on-one with your boss.
Yeah.
You should have one-on-one with your spouse or your partner, one-on-one with yourself. Like
one-on-one with yourself. Yes. How many people have done that? I mean, I actually set a meeting in my calendar that says Sarah's emotional processing time. And I have a list of questions that I go through, and it's at the end of the week so I can like assess the previous week. And I started doing that maybe 3 years ago, and it's evolved, and the questions have kind of shifted and things like that. But I never used to actually sit with myself and ask myself those questions. So that's probably a big insight for many people listening, is giving yourself that gift of sitting down. And, it's not always about outward giving. It's not the people pleasing, right? It's how can you do that for yourself, and how can you answer those questions? So journaling is a great way to do it. If you don't want to sit there and write, you can type, you can audio. I've voice noted, like I process when I voice note. So sometimes I send my partner a voice note and I'm like, you don't have to listen to that. That was me just kind of processing, but here's the summary, but by getting it out in that way, it helps me understand and kind of work through some things. So, get your recorder out and just record yourself. You don't even have to go back and listen to it. It'll just still help you process and distill what's there.
That's some great tools for sure.
Yeah. No, I geek out on this kind of stuff. And I know I could talk about it forever. We do have 5 minutes left. We're going to start wrapping up, but I wanted to check in and do Emily or Carlos, do you have any last words that you'd like to share? Maybe any quotes, additional resources that, again, when you were newer to this type of content, or maybe you fell off the bandwagon, it helped you get back on, anything like that, would love to share with the audience.
I'll let Emily go.
I think for me, it's just always realizing that the line from where you are to where you want to get to is never going to be linear. So for me, it's like always remembering you're on plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. And that also, so no matter what comes at you, don't get stuck in the micro, right? You need to look at the macro, the bigger picture, and pull yourself back. Because I think so many times we get so stuck in the micro. You're looking at this very right here, this detail, this moment right now, and it can make you feel defeated. You know, those emotions, how high do they go? They go really high all of a sudden because you feel failure, you feel defeated, whatever it is. And then the mental health just goes and drops in that battery. And then you get in a cycle of beating yourself up or being sad or just focusing on the negatives. But if you were to be an outsider looking in, you'd go, oh, but it's this little bump right here, but you had all this great stuff here. You have all this great stuff coming over here. You have these options. So like pulling yourself out of that micro and being able to look from the bigger picture.
Yes, I love that. This morning, actually, Rick Hansen, I get his emails. I bought a book of his and got on his newsletter. And it was the practice of viewing the whole scene, not just the little detail. And so it's like, start with, okay, what do you feel? And what do you smell? Like, use your senses. What do you see and everything? And then like, you're focused on this point and there's like, okay, zoom out. What else can you see? What's that a part of? And then, you keep, kind of expanding everything. And so instead of viewing like the dirty oven, you see the whole kitchen, the whole house, and you're just getting a new perspective because you're seeing the whole thing, not just this tiny little micro detail. And that's really important because we get stuck in the weeds, don't we? And we're like so focused on this one thing we're trying to get that we forget about all the other things that are around us.
There's something I saw on social media recently. I don't know if it was somebody actually knew, like whatever, like you scroll through and you just like catch something. But it was like someone went to a therapist and they're like, I can't even clean my dishes. It's just piling up in the sink and I can't get myself to rinse them to put them in the dishwasher. And the therapist told them, just run the dishwasher 2 or 3 times. Like, don't rinse them. And they're like, but I can't do that. Like, but why can't you? You can. And it's like just doing the little things. Like, you can just make the little thing happen, fix this little, and then then you can look over here and fix something. Then you can fix something. And all of a sudden, what maybe got so overwhelming and was such a big project that was creating it, you've now gotten yourself out of very easily. You didn't have to do the hard steps. You could just do something 2 times and make it work.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, just breaking it down, simple steps. It's very often, why do we have that thing that lives on our to-do list in perpetuity? It's because it's not one thing. It's like 100 things. It's 100 steps to accomplish that one thing. And it's too overwhelming to figure out where to start or how to even tackle it. So when you break it down to these little things, then you can chip away and feel like you're making progress, even though it's still there, right? But how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And you chew slowly so that you don't end up choking. Not that I'm advocating eating elephants, caveat for everyone who's going to get upset. It's a metaphor. Unless it's a chocolate elephant, then I will eat all of it. Carlos, what about for yourself?
Emily, Sarah, those are excellent points. I mean, I would say the same. But one thing, I learned, and as I shared earlier on about the confession that my good friend made to us last year, is one thing that I learned is we in aviation, we're just nerds and we're so passionate about what we do and how we do it, that when we are in a setting, we're always talking about aviation and who's doing what and what's going on and this and that. But I've taken that time to just pause and just ask people, how you doing? How's your family? How's work? And just kind of get away from the same things that we do all the time when we see each other and we talk about aviation because we're so passionate, and it's okay. But just really caring about people, loving people, respecting people. And I'm a big proponent of that. I love people. I love people from all different backgrounds, and I love to respect people. Because at the end of the day, we're human. We need to love and respect each other. And I love our community, our business aviation community. We're just such a tight-knit community. We know each other, and we just need to help each other and have that love and respect for each other. And especially when somebody's really struggling mentally, we need to, if we know that individual, we need to recognize and approach them and say, hey, I noticed that things are not a little different with you. Everything okay? And that's what my friend really, when he put us all in a room and said, look, I was in the verge of I was suicidal. I was going to kill myself that day. And it was because some of you asked me what was going on. Then he started really thinking, he has a family. He was going through a lot of horrible things through his life. From a personal perspective, mother had just passed away from cancer. too much work. So those things really, at the end of the day, you start thinking to yourself, somebody can be going through that right now. And could I be a difference maker for their life? Could I save their life even? So those are the things that now I just really focus on. And in our industry, we got to do that more often. Especially with our pilot friends. I mean, I love my pilots, but sometimes they just have too much going on. Some of us do have the ability just to say, I'm going to call today off. I can't take this flight. Some of us don't have that ability. When we got to go, when the boss lady said, we got to go, we got to go. And so sometimes we just got to take care of each other and from that aspect. And, this takes a village for all of us to be successful. And that's what I think the approach I've taken on for the past couple of years, since, pandemic has really induced a lot of mental sickness in our industry. So I think that definitely we need to work together on that aspect.
Thanks, Carlos. I agree. I think caring about and respecting people is very important. It's the, just basic dignity. We all deserve that. And very often, when people are maybe not acting at their best, it's because they've got something going on. So bringing compassion to the table doesn't mean we condone necessarily what's happening, but we can bring compassion to it. And I will just make a slight comment. I don't think that the pandemic made people mentally sick. I think it just highlighted a problem that was already there. And it was the great revealer, and now we have the ability to talk about these things, help normalize things like meditation or these different tools, help normalize the fact that shit is hard and that's okay. And we're going to get through it. Right. We love this industry. We're passionate people. We're very resilient. Humans are nothing but resilient, and we'll be able to get back up again. Every time I say that phrase, I think of the Chumbawamba song. So I hope the rest of you have that song stuck in your head for the rest of the day. You get knocked down, you're going to get back up again because nothing's going to keep you down. And on that note, we're going to conclude our webinar on mental health today. Thank you so much for joining us live, for interacting, for everyone who is here. We appreciate you. Please go and have these conversations with your colleagues, with your friends, with your spouses. This is something that is an open dialogue. It's not a one and done. Next quarter, we're going to, as again, STXBAA and NTBAA, be talking about physical vitality and health. And so we're looking for speakers and panelists for that conversation. If that's you, please send me or Emily a message. We'd love to have that conversation. It will be in the last week of September. And in the meantime, if you need any resources or tools, please don't hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for. Thank you both, Emily and Carlos, for being here with me today as well. And Aasiya.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.